On a hillside above Galilee, Jesus sat down, and the kingdom of heaven sounded quieter than thunder but stronger than stone. He blessed the poor, warned the proud, taught the hidden prayer, and showed his listeners how to build a soul that could stand when the storm came. Now, let the world grow quiet around you. Let the day loosen its grip. Let your breathing slow. This is the Shepherd's Bible. For days, Jesus had moved through the towns and villages that line the shore of the lake. The news of him had traveled faster than the wind across the water. He taught in the synagogues, and those who heard him said that no one had ever spoken like this before. The words fell upon the heart with a weight that felt both ancient and new. It was as if the prophets had returned, but the voice was gentler and the authority was greater. He healed the sick, and the sick rose up whole. The feverish grew cool. The paralyzed stood straight. The leper saw his own skin made clean. The deaf heard. The blind saw. He cast out what tormented the broken, and the broken found rest. The crowds grew. They came from Galilee, from the Decapolis, from Jerusalem and Judea, and from beyond the Jordan. They came carrying their pain, their questions, their weariness, and their hope. They came because someone had finally sounded like truth. So when Jesus saw the multitudes, he did not push deeper into the noise. He went up the mountain. He climbed above the press of bodies and the dust of the road, above the voices that begged and the hands that reached. He found a place on the hillside where the grass was soft and the stones were warm, and he sat down. His disciples came to him. They drew near, not with ambition, but with the quiet trust of those who had left everything to follow. Peter and Andrew, James and John, Matthew and the others, they sat close enough to hear the words before the wind carried them away. They did not jostle for position. They did not whisper questions to one another. They simply came, sat, and waited. And the crowd settled on the slope below them, a great company of ordinary people, fishermen and farmers, mothers and merchants, the well and the wounded, all waiting for the same voice. Some had brought bread, wrapped in cloth. Some had brought nothing but their curiosity. Some had brought a lifetime of disappointment and were hoping against hope that this man might be different. A woman near the back pressed her hands against her lower back, easing the ache of a long walk. A child sat on his father's shoulders, then slid down to the grass when he saw that everyone else was still. The wind moved gently across the hillside. The lake glimmered in the distance, catching the light. Somewhere above, a bird circled slowly, riding the warm air. The grass was dotted with small flowers that no one had planted. The crowd did not rush him. No one demanded a sign. There was something in the way he sat, something in the stillness that gathered around him that made every anxious heart pause. A mother near the front shifted her child onto her hip and stood motionless. A fisherman who had not slept in 2 nights let his shoulders drop. A young man who had walked all morning from the next village sat on a stone and rested his chin in his hands. It was as though the mountain itself had grown quiet, leaning in to listen. The usual noise of the world, the bargaining, the arguing, the worrying, all of it seemed to fade. Even the children stopped fidgeting. The disciples looked at Jesus, and then at the crowd, and then back at Jesus. The moment was sacred. The teaching was about to begin. And then Jesus opened his mouth and taught them. Jesus does not begin with commands. He begins with blessings. He does not ask who is strong enough, wise enough, or good enough. He simply speaks blessing upon those the world often overlooks. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He blesses the poor in spirit first, not the confident, not the polished, not the ones who have figured everything out. He blesses the one who comes to God with empty hands. The poor in spirit are those who know they have nothing to offer heaven that heaven has not already given. They do not dress up their soul for God. They do not pretend to be whole when they are broken. They do not arrive with arguments or accomplishments that they think will earn a place at the table. They know that, before the Maker of all things, every boast falls silent, and every pretense becomes dust. They are the ones who have stopped trying to be their own savior. They are the ones who have finally admitted that they need mercy, and they need it desperately. The poor in spirit do not compare themselves to others and feel superior. They look at themselves honestly and feel small, and that honesty is the very door through which grace enters. The poor in spirit are not necessarily the materially poor, though they may be. They are the spiritually honest, the ones who have given up the game of self-improvement that leads nowhere. They come to God as beggars, and God receives them as children. Jesus says that the kingdom belongs to them, not because they earned it, not because they understood it, because God gives his kingdom to those who know they need him. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Jesus blesses the ones who grieve. He does not tell them to stop crying. He does not rush them toward healing or quote easy sayings. He says that comfort will come to the sorrowful, that God draws near to the broken heart, that tears are not wasted in his sight. The mother who has lost a child, the friend who has buried a friend, the soul that weeps over its own sin, over the cruelty of the world, over the distance between what is and what should be, Jesus blesses them all. There is a mourning that comes from loving deeply in a world where death still lingers. There is a mourning that comes from seeing injustice and feeling powerless to stop it. There is a mourning that comes from looking inward and finding darkness that you did not want to see. Jesus does not say that the mourners will forget why they wept. He says they will be comforted. Comfort is not a promise that sorrow disappears. It is the promise that God sits with the sorrowful, that his presence becomes the warmth that outlasts the longest night, that the one who made the heart knows how to bind it up again. In the kingdom of heaven, mourning is not a weakness. It is a kind of honesty that God honors. The world tells the mourner to move on. Jesus tells the mourner that they are blessed, and that blessing is coming to meet them in their grief. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The world teaches that the earth belongs to the aggressive, the loud, the grasping. Jesus says the earth belongs to the meek. The meek are not the weak. They are the ones who have strength and do not use it to crush. They are the ones who could take revenge and choose mercy instead. They are the ones who could dominate a conversation and choose to listen. They are the ones who trust that God will settle what they cannot. They do not grab land or titles or power. They do not push to the front of the line. They walk softly, speak gently, and love patiently. They receive insults without returning them, not because they are unable to fight, but because they have learned that fighting is not the only way to be strong. They are the ones who let God be their defender. The meek carry a quiet confidence that the world does not understand. They do not need to win every argument because they know who wins in the end. They do not need to defend their reputation because they know who holds their future. The meek have been humbled by life, or by God, or by both, and they have decided that humility is not a prison, but a doorway. And Jesus says that the earth, the very ground beneath our feet, will one day rest in the hands of those who did not seize it by force. It is a strange promise, but it is the promise of the kingdom. The gentle will inherit what the violent could never keep. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. This is a deep, aching hunger. It is not the desire to look good. It is the longing for things to be made right. The person who hungers for righteousness weeps when justice is perverted. They ache when the innocent suffer. They long for a world where the truth is spoken and the vulnerable are safe. They carry in their chest a holy dissatisfaction with the way things are. They are not content to say that the world has always been cruel and always will be. They want more. They want the kingdom. They want God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. This hunger can feel like a burden. It can make a person seem serious, even sad, because they refuse to laugh at what is wrong. They refuse to accept corruption as inevitable. They refuse to believe that oppression is permanent. But Jesus says that this hunger will not go unanswered. The longing for righteousness is not a curse. It is the appetite of a soul that is being prepared for the kingdom. One day, the hungry will be filled. One day, what is crooked will be made straight. One day, the hungry will sit at a table where every tear is wiped away, and they will be satisfied. The hunger is the proof that the kingdom is real, because only a real kingdom could satisfy a hunger this deep. The person who feels this hunger is not being punished. They are being called. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Jesus blesses the ones who forgive when they could judge. He blesses the ones who give when they could keep, who stay when they could walk away, who show kindness to those who have shown them nothing. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is the strength to treat another soul as God treats your own soul, with patience that does not give up, with love that does not keep score. The merciful know that they have received more than they deserved, and so they pass mercy on. They do not wait for the offender to earn forgiveness. They forgive because they have been forgiven much. They do not help the helpless because the helpless will repay them. They help because God has helped them. Mercy is the currency of the kingdom. In the world, you get what you deserve. In the kingdom, you get what God gives, and what God gives is mercy. And Jesus promises that mercy will come back to them, not as a reward for their cleverness, but as the fruit of a heart that has learned to love like God. The merciful will receive mercy because they have become the kind of people who can receive it. They are no longer trying to pay their own debt. They are living in the freedom of grace. The merciful live with open hands, and because their hands are open, they can receive what God pours out. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Purity of heart is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of single-minded devotion. The pure in heart are those who want God more than they want anything else. They do not split their soul between heaven and earth, between prayer and pretense, between worship and ambition. They want to see God, and because they want Him, they are being shaped into the kind of people who can look upon Him without fear. The promise is staggering. They shall see God. Not in a dream, not in a distant rumor. They shall see Him as He is, because their hearts have become mirrors that can hold His light. The pure in heart are not perfect people. They are honest people. They are the ones who bring their whole self to God, their doubts and their devotion, their failures and their faith, and they ask him to make them clean. And he does. Purity is not a wall that keeps the world out. It is a window that lets God in. The pure in heart see God because they are always looking for him. They find him in the ordinary, in the suffering, in the silence, and in the face of their neighbor. They are not distracted by the glitter of lesser things. They have seen enough of the world to know that it cannot satisfy, and they have tasted enough of God to know that he can. The pure in heart are the ones who pray with one mind, who love with one love, who live with one aim. They are not double-minded. They are whole-hearted, and the whole-hearted will see the whole. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Jesus blesses the ones who make peace, not the ones who merely enjoy it. Peacemakers step into the middle of conflict. They absorb the heat of anger. They bridge the gap between the estranged. They do not pick sides for the sake of their own comfort. They work for reconciliation, knowing that peace is costly and that it often looks like surrendering pride. They are the ones who apologize first. They are the ones who listen longest. They are the ones who refuse to let a broken relationship stay broken if there is any way to mend it. Peacemakers are called the children of God because they are doing what God does. God is the great reconciler, the one who crosses infinite distance to bring enemies home. The peacemakers carry his likeness in their hands. They are not naive. They know that some people will reject peace, but they offer it anyway, because the peace of God is not conditional on the response of the other person. A peacemaker plants seeds that may not sprout for years, but they plant them anyway, trusting that God gives the increase. The peacemaker does not need to win. They need to heal, and in the kingdom, healing is victory. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is the hardest blessing. Jesus does not bless suffering for its own sake. He blesses the suffering that comes, because a person refuses to stop loving what is right. He blesses the one who is mocked for mercy, rejected for honesty, silenced for speaking truth, or cast out for refusing to join the cruelty of the crowd. He blesses the faithful soul who is misunderstood, slandered, and lonely because they chose the narrow way. The world calls them fools. Jesus calls them blessed, and he repeats the promise. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Jesus lifts his eyes to the crowd. He is not speaking in generalities. He is looking at real faces, real fears, real futures. He knows that some who hear him will lose their position, their family, their safety because they followed him. He tells them to rejoice, not because the pain is pleasant, but because the reward is certain. The prophets before them suffered the same way, and heaven did not forget them. Heaven does not forget anyone who suffers for love. The disciple is not promised an easy life. The disciple is promised a life that matters, a life that is woven into the eternal purposes of God. The persecution is real, but the reward is greater. The sorrow is heavy, but the joy is deeper. Rejoice, he says, not because the hatred is good, but because the one who endures it is counted among the prophets, among the faithful, among the beloved of God. The persecution is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of faithfulness. The world persecutes what it cannot control, And the kingdom of God is the one thing the world will never control. The hillside is quiet. The words settle like seeds into the soil. A fisherman wipes his eye. A widow bows her head. The Beatitudes are not a ladder to climb. They are a picture of the kingdom. Jesus is showing what his people look like. They are poor, mourning, meek, hungry, merciful, pure, peacemaking, and sometimes persecuted. They are not impressive by the world's standards, but they are blessed by heaven's standards, and that is the only standard that will last. The crowd has been sitting for a long time, but no one seems to notice. The sun is warm, the air is clear, and the words are entering hearts that have waited a lifetime to hear them. A child lies down on the grass and looks at the sky. An old man nods slowly, as if he has finally heard something he always knew but could never name. And Jesus does not stop. Having described the citizen of the kingdom, he now turns to the calling of the kingdom. The same people who receive these blessings are now given a purpose. They are not merely comforted. They are commissioned. The words change, but the tone remains the same. The voice is still gentle. The authority is still absolute. You are the salt of the earth. Salt is not loud. It does not call attention to itself. It simply preserves what would otherwise rot. It flavors what would otherwise be bland. It makes thirst for what is good. In the ancient world, salt was a sign of covenant. It was used in offerings. It sealed agreements. It kept food from spoiling in the heat. Jesus tells his listeners that they are the salt of the earth, not because they are powerful, but because their quiet faithfulness keeps the world from losing its taste for goodness. A disciple is not a performer. A disciple is a faithful presence. When the salt stays salty, the meal is saved. When the disciple stays true, the world around them is preserved from despair. The salt does not announce its work. It simply works, and the world is better for it. Even if the world does not know why, the salt works in secret, in the stew, in the grain, in the wound, doing what only salt can do. The disciple is like that. They are not always seen, but they are always needed. But if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Jesus is warning them. The danger is not that the world will hate them. The danger is that they will become like the world. The danger is that they will lose their distinctiveness, their savor, their willingness to be different for the sake of the kingdom. A disciple who looks like the crowd, thinks like the crowd, and lives like the crowd has lost the very thing the world needs. The warning is gentle, but it is real. Do not let the world squeeze you into its shape. Stay salty. Stay faithful. Stay quietly, stubbornly good. Do not trade your calling for comfort. The salt that has lost its taste is not evil. It is useless, and uselessness is a kind of death. Jesus wants his people to be alive, to be sharp, to be flavorful, to make a difference that only salt can make. The salt that has lost its taste cannot be made salty again. It is a solemn warning. The grace of God is abundant, but the calling of God is serious. Once the disciple has tasted the kingdom, there is no going back to the tastelessness of the world. You are the light of the world. Light does not struggle to be seen. It simply shines. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. They put it on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. Jesus is speaking to people who know the night. They know the darkness of closed rooms, of narrow streets, of long walks home after labor. They know what a lamp means. It means safety. It means guidance. It means someone is home. It means you will not stumble. The disciple is light because Christ is light. The goodness of a faithful life is not meant to be hidden. It is meant to be seen, not for the disciple's glory, but for the glory of the Father in heaven. When a person loves their enemy, forgives the unforgivable, keeps their word, prays in secret, and gives without seeking praise, something shines. People do not always understand it, but they see it. The light is visible. It is warm. It is honest. It points toward a home that is not entirely of this world. The light does not need to explain itself. It simply burns, and the darkness cannot overcome it. The crowd on the hillside is bathed in warm light. Some will carry these words down to the villages. They will walk past olive presses and sleeping dogs, past lamps being lit in windows, past the first stars beginning to show. The words will follow them. Salt and light, faithfulness and witness, quietness and visibility. The kingdom is not a kingdom of noise. It is a kingdom of presence, a lamp on a stand, a city on a hill, a life that is seen because it is lived. And the Father who sees in secret is the same Father who is glorified when his children shine before others. The hidden life and the visible life are not two different lives. They are the same life, seen from two angles. God works in the secret place, and the secret work becomes public light. The salt that preserves in secret is the same salt that flavors the meal. The light that burns in the heart is the same light that shines in the window. You cannot separate the inner life from the outer life. If the inner life is real, the outer life will show it. If the outer life is bright, it is because the inner life is burning. The light lies warm upon the lake. The wind carries the smell of dust and time. The crowd remains still, held by a voice that speaks with authority and love. They have heard what it means to be blessed. They have heard what it means to be salt and light. The teaching is not finished. The mountain has more to say. But for now, the words rest upon them like a covering, like the warmth of a fire that does not burn, like the promise of a home that is being prepared for those who follow. Evening will come in its time. The birds will return to their nests, and the first lamps will be lit in the distant village, small points of light against the gathering dark. And on the hillside, the words of Jesus hang in the air, waiting to be carried home, waiting to be lived, waiting to build a soul that can stand when the storm comes. On the hillside above Galilee, the light rests gently across the grass and stones. The lake glimmers in the distance, and the air carries the faint smell of wild herbs and warm earth. Jesus has spoken of blessedness, of salt and light, of a city that cannot be hidden. The crowd has settled into a stillness they did not know they possessed. A fisherman sits with his calloused hands open on his knees. A mother draws her child closer, not out of fear, but because the voice of Jesus makes the world feel safe enough to rest in. A widow who has walked far from the next village listens with her head slightly bowed, as if the words are falling on her like rain after a long drought. Now Jesus turns to something even deeper, something that reaches back into the very history of his people. into the law and the prophets, and forward into the mystery of what he has come to do. The listeners lean in. The wind moves through the valley below, and the voice of Jesus continues. Some among the crowd may have wondered whether this new teacher came to tear down what Moses gave. Some may have feared that the old commandments were about to be cast aside like broken pottery, shattered by a new prophet who spoke with too much freedom. Others may have hoped for exactly that, for an easy word that would make the heavy burden feel lighter by simply removing it. Human hearts are always tempted to think that freedom means the end of every boundary, that love means the cancellation of every command. But Jesus does not come to destroy. He comes to fulfill. Think of a promise made long ago, whispered through the prophets, written in the blood of sacrifices, carried in the prayers of the faithful across centuries. Think of the law given on Sinai, when the mountains smoked and the people trembled, and God spoke the shape of righteousness into the ears of a young nation. That law was never a prison. It was a gift, a fence around life, a drawing of the boundaries within which human beings could flourish and know God. It taught them not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to covet what belonged to another. It taught them to rest, to let the land breathe, to release the poor from debt, to honor father and mother. And the prophets, those voices that cried in the wilderness and in the courts of kings, were not rebels against the law. They were its guardians, calling the people back when they had wandered from its heart, reminding them that God desired mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. All of it, the commandments and the visions, the rules and the poetry, the warnings and the hopes, finds its home in Jesus. He does not erase the law and the prophets. He is their destination, their completion, their living embodiment. Every word that came from the Father was a step on a road that leads to him. Not one stroke of the pen, not the smallest mark of the Hebrew letters, will pass away until all is accomplished. Heaven and earth may sooner vanish than the smallest intention of God be left unfinished. The crowd must have felt the weight of this. Jesus is not a revolutionary in the cheap sense. He is not sweeping the old aside to make room for the new. He is the one in whom the old becomes new, in whom the law is kept so perfectly that it is transformed into love. The commandments are not a cage to be broken. They are a path to be walked to its end, and Jesus walks it to the end. He keeps the Sabbath by healing the wounded. He honors his Father by dying for his enemies. He fulfills the command not to murder by refusing even to harbor contempt. He fulfills the command not to commit adultery by keeping his heart pure. He fulfills the command not to steal by giving everything, even his life. The law is not too small. It is too small when it is only kept on the outside. Jesus is about to show what it looks like when it is written inside, when the heart itself becomes the tablet where the finger of God writes. But here is what changes. The scribes and the Pharisees have studied the commandments with great care. They have counted the steps, measured the boundaries, weighed the exceptions, and kept the outside neat. They have made the law visible, and in making it visible, they have sometimes made it a show. Their prayers are long, their fringes are broad, their washing is meticulous. Yet Jesus says something that must have fallen on the crowd like quiet thunder, like the sound of a door opening into a much larger room. Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. He does not mean more rules. He does not mean stricter washing, longer prayers, broader phylacteries. He means a righteousness that goes deeper than the skin, deeper than the visible act, deeper than the reputation. He means a heart that loves the law not as a shield for the ego, but as the breathing of a soul that wants to be near God. The Pharisees clean the outside of the cup. Jesus cleans the source from which everything flows, and he wants to do the same in every person who hears him. He wants to plant the kingdom not on the tongue, but in the hidden place where no one sees except the Father. The sun climbs higher over the hillside. The grass warms beneath the listeners. The lake glimmers, and the distant hills look like the folds of a garment. The air itself seems to wait, as if creation is holding its breath to hear what comes next. The birds circle overhead, and their shadows pass across the grass like small mercies. The crowd is still, and Jesus speaks again, turning now from what the hands do to what the heart carries before any act is seen. Jesus now speaks of what happens before the hand strikes, before the words leave the mouth, before the damage is visible to anyone. You have heard it said that you shall not murder, and that whoever murders will be liable to judgment. The crowd knows this. It is carved into their memory from childhood, written on the parchment they heard in the synagogue, inscribed into the conscience by the finger of God. It is the command that makes civil life possible, the boundary that keeps the strong from destroying the weak. But Jesus says more. He says that whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, "You fool," will be liable to the fire of hell. The words are sobering. Jesus does not lower the standard. He does not say that the commandment against murder is too harsh and must be relaxed. He raises the gaze from the outward act to the inward flame. He looks at the seed, not only the fruit. He looks at the root, not only the tree that has already fallen. He is teaching that the heart is the place where the kingdom is won or lost, and that a heart filled with anger is a heart already walking away from the kingdom, even if the hands are clean. Anger is not the same as murder, but anger is the seed from which murder grows. Jesus sees the heart as a field, and he wants his disciples to tend the soil before the thorns choke it. The one who lets anger sit and fester in the chest is already walking a dangerous path. The one who nurses a grievance, who replays the offense in the quiet hours, who lets the imagination rehearse what justice would look like, is moving closer to the edge than he knows. The one who speaks contempt, who looks at another soul and calls it worthless, who dismisses a brother with a word of scorn, has already begun to kill something. He has killed the image of God in his own eyes. He has made a human being into an object, and the moment that happens, the soul begins to die. The fire Jesus names is real, not because God is eager to punish, but because contempt and hatred destroy the one who carries them. They burn the conscience. They harden the eyes. They turn a child of God into someone who can no longer see his brother as a brother. The warning is mercy dressed in severity. Jesus is trying to rescue his listeners before the fire becomes a habit they cannot escape, before the heart becomes a stone that no longer feels the warmth of heaven. He wants them to know that the soul is shaped in secret, and what is shaped in secret will one day stand in the light. Then he speaks of the altar, and the image he gives is so startling that it must have stopped the breath of every devout listener. If you are offering your gift at the altar, and they remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. This is one of the most beautiful reversals in all the teaching of Jesus. The altar is holy. The gift is holy. The smoke rising, the blood poured out, the sacrifice accepted. These are the center of Israel's worship, the place where earth touches heaven, the place where God meets his people. But the broken relationship is more urgent than the ritual. God does not want the sacrifice of a divided heart. He wants the whole heart, and the whole heart cannot be his while it is still at war with a neighbor. The journey from the altar to the brother may be long and humbling. Pride will resist it. The feet will drag. The tongue will want to justify. But Jesus says, "Go, make peace. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Do not let the offering become a mask for a soul that refuses to bend." Reconciliation is not a distraction from worship. It is the truest worship. The gift will wait. The Father waits longer still, but the door of mercy will not stay open forever, and the heart that refuses to heal what it has broken will slowly lose the ability to feel the mercy it needs for itself. The one who is forgiven much must learn to forgive, and the one who seeks the face of God must first seek the face of the brother he has wounded. The hillside is quiet. A lark calls overhead, and its song seems to echo the strange beauty of what Jesus has said. The listeners sit in the stillness, and the words settle into them like seeds into soil that has been plowed and is waiting for rain. The wind moves again, carrying the scent of the lake, and the light seems to rest more softly on the ground. Jesus then speaks of faithfulness in marriage with a tenderness that is also unflinching. "You have heard it said that whoever divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. The law of Moses made provision for hardness of heart, for the breaking of what was meant to be unbroken. It was a concession, not a command. It was a fence around destruction, not a license to abandon. But Jesus goes further. Anyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." The teaching is hard because the covenant is hard. Marriage is not a contract to be dissolved when it becomes inconvenient, when the feelings fade, when a better offer appears. It is a joining that mirrors the faithfulness of God to his people. In a world where women could be discarded with a piece of paper, where a man could send his wife away with nothing but shame, Jesus stands with the vulnerable. He guards the one who could be cast aside. He reminds the strong that their strength is given to protect, not to abandon. Jesus does not speak these words to trap the wounded or to shame the broken. He speaks them to guard the beauty of what God has joined. He speaks them to protect the vulnerable, to keep the strong from abandoning the weak, to remind his listeners that love is meant to be stubborn, patient, and lasting. The marriage bed is holy because it is meant to be a small picture of a much larger covenant, the covenant between the Creator and the soul he will not let go. When a man looks at a woman with lust, he has already committed adultery with her in his heart. The same standard applies. The heart is the place where fidelity is forged or broken. Jesus is not adding a new burden to crush the weak. He is revealing the depth of what God intended, the purity that makes love trustworthy, the inner loyalty that keeps, the promise when the eyes wander and the flesh grows restless. He wants the heart to be clean, because the clean heart is the heart that can see God. Then Jesus speaks words that must have made the crowd shiver. "If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better to enter life with one eye than to be thrown into the fire of hell with two. It is better to enter life crippled than with two hands to go into the fire." The imagery is shocking, but Jesus is not calling for literal self-mutilation. He is speaking the language of radical seriousness. He wants his listeners to understand that sin is not a minor inconvenience. It is a fire that spreads. It is a rot that destroys. The eye that looks with lust, the hand that takes what is not given, the heart that turns toward what kills, these must be dealt with decisively. Not with a knife, but with a will that refuses to play with temptation. The kingdom of heaven is not a place for half measures. The soul that wants to be whole must be willing to lose what endangers it, even if that loss feels like death. Better to enter life maimed than to keep the whole body and lose the whole soul. The fire of hell is not a cruel threat. It is the mercy of Jesus telling the truth about what happens when a soul keeps what destroys it. He wants to save his listeners, not from a distant punishment, but from the destruction they are already doing to themselves. He wants them to be ruthless with sin and gentle with people, to deal with the darkness inside before it becomes the darkness that surrounds them. The hillside grows warmer. The listeners sit very still, as if the ground itself has become a place of decision. The teaching of Jesus is not comfortable. It is a fire that warms and a fire that purifies. And they are beginning to understand that the heart is the battlefield where the kingdom is won or lost, and that no outward obedience can replace the inward transformation. The widow lifts her head. The fisherman closes his eyes for a moment, as if he is searching his own heart for what needs to be surrendered. The mother holds her child closer, and the child is quiet, sensing that something holy is happening in the silence. Jesus then speaks of the tongue and the eye, of words and truth. You have heard it said that you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. The people know the elaborate oaths, the swearing by heaven and earth and the holy city, the ways that clever tongues have found to make promises sound strong while leaving loopholes for escape. They have heard the oaths that bind and the oaths that deceive, the formulas that make a lie sound like truth and a truth sound like a lie. But Jesus answers, do not swear at all, not by heaven, for it is the throne of God, not by earth, for it is his footstool, not by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King, not even by your own head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. The listeners are being invited into a life so honest that oaths become unnecessary. The person who needs to swear by something greater than himself is a person whose ordinary word has already become weak. A yes that needs to be decorated with holy names is a yes that is not sure of itself. Jesus wants his disciples to speak as children speak when they have not yet learned to lie, with a simplicity that is its own authority. The tongue is meant to bear truth, not to decorate it or bind it with elaborate promises. If every word is true, no extra binding is needed. The truth is binding enough. The Father in heaven knows the heart before the mouth moves. The disciple who lives in that knowledge does not need to pile oath upon oath to be believed. His yes is yes, and his no is no, and the light around him is clear. The truth is a light that needs no candle. The truth is a rock that needs no oath. Then comes a teaching that sounds like weakness to the ear trained in power, like foolishness to the mind shaped by the world. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. The law of proportion, the law of justice measured out like grain in a balance, the law that keeps revenge from becoming a wildfire. It was a good law, a restraining law, a law that said only an eye may be taken for an eye, no more. But Jesus says, do not resist the one who is evil. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. If anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. The crowd must have felt the strangeness of this. The world runs on retaliation. Honor is defended by force. Rights are protected by resistance. The strong survive by striking back. But Jesus speaks of a different kind of strength, a strength that refuses to be dragged down into the same cycle of bitterness, a strength that comes from belonging to a kingdom where the rules are upside down, where the last are first and the first are last, where the meek inherit the earth and the peacemakers are called the children of God. Turning the other cheek is not cowardice. It is not passivity. It is not the refusal to stand up for what is right. It is the refusal to let the enemy define the shape of the encounter. It is a way of saying, "You cannot make me into your image. I will not strike back." And in that refusal, your power over me is broken. The slap on the cheek is an insult, a blow to honor, a claim of dominance. Turning the other cheek is a claim of dignity that refuses to play the game of dominance at all. It is a way of standing in the image of God while the world tries to drag you into the mud. It is a witness that there is another way to be human, a way that does not need to win by force, a way that is strong because it is loved by the Father. Going the second mile is not weakness. It is generosity that outruns demand, love that exhausts cruelty. The Roman soldier who compels a mile learns that this subject is not a slave but a free man, free because he gives what cannot be taken. The second mile is a miracle of grace. It turns coercion into gift, oppression into witness, and the oppressor is confronted not with rebellion, but with a love he cannot explain. Giving to the one who asks, and lending to the one who borrows, is a way of keeping the heart soft in a world that hardens itself for fear of being used. The world says, "Protect what is yours." Jesus says, "Give what is yours, and discover that nothing is truly yours until it is given." The Father, who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, does not need your cloak. But your enemy needs to see that the kingdom of heaven has changed the rules of the game. Jesus is not making laws for a courtroom. He is painting a portrait of a heart that is no longer governed by the arithmetic of revenge. And then, the hardest and the most beautiful word of all, you have heard it said, "You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy." The second part of that saying was not written in the law of Moses, but it had crept into the hearts of the people, into the logic of the world, into the way that human beings naturally divide the world between us and them. The neighbor is the one like me, the one close to me, the one on my side. The enemy is the one who threatens, the one who has harmed, the one who wishes me ill. But Jesus says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." This is the holy strangeness of the kingdom. This is the place where the world stops making sense and the kingdom begins to make sense. The sun rises on the evil and on the good. The rain falls on the just and on the unjust. God does not withhold his mercy from those who hate him. He gives them breath, bread, and mourning. He sends the rain on the field of the wicked as well as the field of the righteous. He gives the gift of life to the persecutor as well as the persecuted. He makes the sun shine on both, because his mercy is not earned by goodness, but given by grace. And he calls his children to do the same. To love the enemy is not to pretend the enemy is harmless. It is not to deny the wound, to excuse the cruelty, to call evil good. It is to refuse to let the enemy become the measure of your soul. It is to look at the one who hates you and see not a devil but a human being, made in the same image, beloved by the same Father, though wandering and lost. Prayer for the persecutor is the most radical act of love, because it asks God to bless the very hand that strikes. It refuses the logic of us and them. It breaks the cycle of hatred by inserting mercy where cruelty was expected. When you pray for your enemy, you are not only changing your enemy's possibility, you are changing your own heart. You are refusing to become the mirror image of the one who hates you. You are choosing to become like the Father, who is perfect in mercy. The enemy love of Jesus is not a strategy for winning. It is not a clever way to disarm the opponent. It is the nature of the kingdom, the way God himself is, the love that loves because it is love, not because it is loved in return. To love only those who love you is what tax collectors do. To greet only your brothers is what Gentiles do. Even the world knows how to love its own. Even the world knows how to gather in tribes and defend its own. Even the world knows how to reward its friends and punish its enemies. But the children of the Father in heaven are called to something higher, something that makes no sense in the economy of the world, but makes perfect sense in the economy of grace. They are called to be perfect, as their heavenly Father is perfect. He does not mean perfection without flaw. He does not mean a life without stumble or a heart without struggle. He means perfection of love, completeness of mercy, wholeness of heart. The Father is perfect in his kindness to the ungrateful and the evil. The child of the Father is called to grow into that same fullness, to become whole in love, undivided in devotion, complete in the image of the one who made them. This is not a command to despair. It is an invitation to become. The journey is long. The fall is often. The feet stumble. The heart wavers. But the direction is set, and the grace is given. And the Father who sees in secret walks beside every step, and the mercy that has been shown is the mercy that must be shared. The kingdom is not a place where the strong survive. It is a place where the loving become whole. The hillside grows quiet. The words of Jesus have moved through the crowd like a slow river, carrying some to wonder, some to weep, some to hope. The lilies still stand in the grass, white and simple, not worrying about tomorrow. The birds still move across the sky, not storing grain in barns, trusting the Father who knows their need. The lake glimmers in the distance, and the sun warms the stones where the listeners sit. The fisherman opens his eyes and looks at the teacher with a gaze that has changed. The widow smiles through tears, not because the teaching is easy, but because it is true. And the kingdom of heaven, spoken in a voice both gentle and unyielding, continues to unfold in the hearts of all who have ears to hear, of all who are willing to let the old righteousness die and the new life begin. The law is fulfilled. The heart is opened. The tongue is made simple. The enemy is loved. And the love that loves the enemy is the love that will outlast the world, because it is the love of the Father, and the Father is perfect, and his children are called to become like him. The teaching has climbed steadily, like the path up this hillside. Jesus has spoken of loving enemies, of blessing those who curse, of praying for the persecutor, of going the second mile when one is demanded. He has spoken of perfection, not as a cold demand, but as the warmth of the Father in heaven, who causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, who sends rain on the just and the unjust. And now the voice of Jesus turns inward. He turns toward what is hidden. He turns toward the life that happens when no human eye is watching, when no crowd is listening, when the room is quiet and the door is closed. It is one thing to love an enemy when someone is watching. It is another thing to love in secret. It is one thing to give, to pray, to fast, when the sound of it reaches the street. It is another thing to do these things in the hidden place, where only the Father sees. And Jesus says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For if you do, you have no reward from your Father in heaven." The words fall gently, but they carry weight. Beware, not because the Father is angry, but because the soul is fragile. The soul can begin to live for the echo instead of the voice. It can begin to give for the sound of the trumpet instead of the need of the neighbor. The soul can slowly forget that the Father is watching and begin to perform for an audience that will soon forget its name. When you give alms, he says, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. The trumpet has blown. The eyes have turned. The praise has risen, and that is all they will ever have. The image is vivid, a horn announcing kindness, a signal drawing attention to what should have been quiet. The poor receive the coin, but the giver has already received what he wanted. The exchange is complete. The Father has nothing left to give, because the soul asked for the wrong thing. It asked for the crowd. It asked for the nod. It asked for the reputation of being generous, and it received it. The account is closed. But Jesus does not leave the command there. He does not say, stop giving. He says, give differently. When you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The left hand and the right hand, two parts of the same body, close enough to touch, yet Jesus speaks of a hiddenness so deep that even the self does not keep score. Not a ledger of kindness, not a record of generosity, not a memory of who was helped and when, stored away for future telling. Just the quiet movement of a hand reaching into a purse, or placing bread into another's palm, or leaving a gift where no name is signed. The Father sees, and the Father sees in secret. That is where the reward lives, not in the crowd's applause, but in the gaze of the one who knows. The reward is not a payment for services rendered. It is the deepening of a hidden love between the soul and the Father. It is the peace that comes from knowing that the only witness who matters was already there. The wind moves over the hillside. A bird passes overhead, its shadow crossing the grass. The crowd sits still, and the disciples lean closer. Some have closed their eyes, not from sleep, but from the weight of listening. A mother holds her child more gently. A tired fisherman rests his hands on his knees. The light over the lake is steady, and the voice of Jesus continues. He has moved from giving to praying, and he speaks of it with the same care, the same searching love, the same concern that the soul might lose its way by reaching for the wrong thing. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. Again, the same warning. Prayer can become a costume. It can become a performance. The words can be beautiful. The posture can be humble. The voice can be low. But if the heart is reaching for the eyes of the crowd, the prayer has already returned to the earth it came from. The street corner is not a sin. The synagogue is not a sin. But the heart that chooses these places for their visibility has already chosen its reward. It has chosen the glance of a passer-by over the ear of the Father. It has chosen a moment of human admiration over an eternity of hidden communion. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The room, the shut door, the silence. This is where prayer begins to live, not in the absence of people, but in the presence of the Father, The room is not a prison. It is a sanctuary. The door is not a wall against the world. It is a threshold into a deeper world. The darkness of the room is not emptiness. It is the place where the unseen becomes more real than the seen. And in that darkness, the Father is light. In that quiet, the Father is voice. In that solitude, the Father is closer than a brother. Jesus continues, "When you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him." The Gentiles, the nations outside the covenant, they pray to gods who must be bargained with, shouted at, worn down with repetition. They approach the divine like a merchant at a market, believing that volume and length will secure the deal. But the Father of Jesus is not deaf. He is not distant. He does not need to be informed of our needs. Prayer is not a negotiation with a reluctant stranger. Prayer is the voice of a child turning toward a father who already knows. The child does not need to explain the hunger. The child simply comes. The child does not need to prove the worthiness of the request. The child simply asks. And because of this, because the Father already knows, because the relationship is trust and not transaction, Jesus gives His disciples the words that have shaped the worship of the church for centuries. He does not shout them. He does not dramatize them. He speaks them simply, as if teaching a child how to speak at home. Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us. Deliver us, our Father. Not the father of a distant nation, but the father of a child who draws near. In heaven, high above, yet close enough to hear. May your name be kept holy. The name is not a syllable. It is the whole person, the whole presence, the whole reality of God. Kept holy, set apart, reverenced, not used for small things, not dragged into arguments, not worn as a charm. The name is holy because God is holy, and the prayer begins by placing the holiness of God before the need of the soul. Let your kingdom come. The kingdom Jesus has been announcing since the shores of Galilee, the rule of God, breaking in like light through a window, like water through dry ground, like a seed through winter soil. Let your will be done. In heaven there is no resistance. The angels do not debate. The will of God is joy, harmony, order, love. On earth there is confusion, conflict, sorrow, rebellion, and the prayer asks that earth might become more like heaven. One hidden prayer at a time, one obedient heart at a time, one small room with a shut door at a time. Give us today our daily bread, not tomorrow's storehouse, today's need, the bread that sustains the body and the soul. The word is modest. It is not a demand for luxury. It is a request for enough, for sustenance, for the quiet confidence that the Father provides what the day requires. It is the prayer of a people who have learned that tomorrow is not theirs to control, but today is theirs to receive. Forgive us. This is the heart of the prayer. This is where the kingdom enters the human chest. Forgiveness. We ask to be forgiven, as we have forgiven, not as a transaction, but as a breath. The forgiven heart forgives. The forgiving heart is forgiven. The two movements are one. We cannot receive what we refuse to give. We cannot be opened by God if we have closed ourselves to our brother. And the prayer is dangerous in its beauty. It asks that the mercy we measure out might become the measure we receive. Deliver us. The prayer does not pretend that the path is safe. It asks for protection. It asks for rescue. It asks that the hidden life, the secret room, the quiet communion, might be guarded by the Father who sees in secret. This is the prayer of a people who know their weakness, who know the darkness that waits, who know that without the Father's deliverance they would fall. And so they ask, simply, directly, like children asking their Father to walk them home through the night. Jesus does not leave the line about forgiveness alone. He returns to it. He wants the connection to be felt. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. This is not a cruel equation. It is a description of reality. The heart that refuses to open its hand to others has already closed its hand to God. Forgiveness is not a feeling that arrives. It is a decision that releases, and the Father waits to release us as we release those who have harmed us. This is the hidden work of the kingdom, the secret forgiveness offered in the quiet room where no one sees, where no one applauds, where the soul is simply set free. The one who forgives in secret is storing treasure where moth and rust cannot reach. The one who refuses to forgive is storing bitterness where it will slowly consume the soul. And Jesus speaks this plainly, not to frighten, but to heal. He wants the forgiveness to flow. He wants the debt to be cancelled. He wants the hidden heart to be as clean as the hidden prayer. And then fasting. Jesus does not neglect it. He does not skip over it as if it were an old practice from another time. When you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so as to show others that they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting may be seen not by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. The same pattern, the same hiddenness, the same gaze of the Father. Oil on the head. Wash the face. Look normal. Live normally. Let the hunger do its work in the soul, not in the reputation. Let the body feel its need, so that the spirit can learn its deeper need. The Father sees the emptiness. The Father sees the longing. The Father sees the sacrifice. And the Father fills what has been emptied. He fills it with himself. He fills it with the quiet certainty that the soul is seen, that the soul is known, that the soul is loved by the one who watches in the secret place. This is the hidden life of the disciple. Giving that leaves no trace. Prayer that rises like incense in a closed room. Fasting that nourishes the spirit while the body feels lack. Forgiveness that loosens the grip of the past. All of it seen by the Father. All of it rewarded by the Father. Not with human praise, but with something deeper. Something that remains when the crowd has gone home, when the mountain grows quiet, when the night comes and the soul must stand before God alone. The hidden life is the real life. The visible life is only its shadow. And Jesus has shown the way. He has opened the door. He has invited the soul into the room where the Father waits. The teaching has moved through the hidden practices, like water moving through deep channels beneath the earth. And now, Jesus speaks of what fills the heart. He speaks of treasure. He speaks of the eye. He speaks of the undivided soul. The crowd has been still for a long time. The sun has shifted. The shadows on the hillside are longer. Some have eaten the bread they brought. Some have shared their water. But all are listening. All are waiting. The voice of Jesus is like a stream that does not rush, but always reaches its destination. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The words are simple, but they search the listener. They search slowly, like a physician feeling for the place of pain. Treasures on earth, not only gold, but anything that can be lost, anything that rust can touch, anything that a thief can carry away. Reputation, comfort, security, status, the approval of the crowd, the memory of past glory. The things that seem so solid until the moth finds them, until the rust spreads, until the thief comes in the night. Jesus does not say these things are evil. He says they are fragile, and the heart that clings to what is fragile will itself become fragile. The heart that builds its house on what can be taken away will live in constant fear of the taking. It will wake at every sound. It will count its possessions. It will measure its worth by what it holds. And slowly, quietly, the treasure will own the heart, instead of the heart owning the treasure. But treasures in heaven, what are they? Jesus does not list them. He leaves the phrase open, like a door that invites the soul to walk through. Mercy is a treasure in heaven. Forgiveness is a treasure in heaven. Hidden prayer, secret giving, love of enemies, purity of heart, the hunger of fasting, the peace of reconciliation. These are the currencies that moth cannot eat and rust cannot stain. These are the possessions that no thief can reach. They are stored in the heart of the Father, and they are given to the heart that seeks them. And the heart that dwells there becomes steady, becomes calm, becomes free. It does not panic when the market shifts. It does not despair when the barn is empty. It does not crumble when the reputation fades, for its treasure is elsewhere. Its treasure is in the hands of the Father. Its treasure is in the kingdom that does not pass away. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The heart follows. It always follows. It cannot be commanded to stay. It can only be drawn by what it loves. And Jesus wants the heart drawn toward heaven, not because earth is ugly, but because heaven is home. The heart was made for the eternal. The heart was made for the holy, and when it attaches itself to what passes, it grieves itself. When it attaches itself to what remains, it finds rest. The treasure is not a bribe. It is a magnet. It is the true north that pulls the compass of the soul into alignment. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is sound, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is not sound, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? The eye is not only a physical organ, it is the way the soul looks out. It is the way the heart reaches toward what it desires. A sound eye is single, clear, undivided. It looks at one thing and sees it truly. It sees the kingdom as the pearl of great price. It sees the Father as the treasure beyond all treasure. It sees the path of Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life. But a bad eye is clouded, divided, pulled in many directions. It wants the kingdom and the world. It wants the Father and mammon. It wants heaven and the praise of the street corner. And when the eye is dark, the whole life becomes dark. The light that should guide becomes confusion. The path that should be clear becomes a stumble. The body that should be full of light becomes a house of shadows. And if the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? It is a darkness that does not know it is dark. It is a darkness that believes itself to be light. It is the most dangerous darkness of all, because it will not seek the true light. No one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon. The word carries weight. It is not simply money. It is the spirit of wealth that demands loyalty. It is the power of possession that whispers, "Keep me, protect me, measure yourself by me, trust me to save you." God and mammon. Two masters standing at the door of the soul. And Jesus says, you cannot serve both, not because God is jealous in a petty way, but because the soul is not large enough for two thrones. Will win. One will lose. And the choice is hidden, quiet, daily. It is made in the small moments when the hand reaches for the purse, when the eye lingers on what another has, when the heart calculates instead of trusts. It is made in the silence of the room, when no one is watching, when the temptation to store, to hoard, to grasp rises like a small voice in the dark. And the disciple must choose. Every day, the disciple must choose God or mammon, the kingdom or the closet full of rust, the hidden Father or the visible reward. The choice is not made once. It is made in 1,000 quiet moments, until the heart has learned to love one and release the other. Jesus is calling for an undivided heart, a heart that has one treasure, a heart that has one master, a heart that is not pulled between the promise of heaven and the anxiety of earth. The call is gentle, but it is clear. The kingdom asks for the whole soul, not in cruelty, but in love. For a divided soul is a tired soul. It is a soul that spends its strength pulling in two directions. It is a soul that cannot rest because it does not know where it belongs. And Jesus offers rest by offering singleness of heart. One treasure, one eye, one master, one peace that passes understanding. And the soul that gives itself fully to the Father finds that the Father gives it fully back, not as a possession, but as a beloved child. And because the heart is so easily divided, because the eye is so easily drawn, because the treasure is so easily misplaced, Jesus speaks the words that have comforted the anxious for 2,000 years. He speaks them not as a rebuke, but as a balm. He speaks them not to shame the worried, but to lift the burdened. He speaks them to the same crowd, on the same hillside, with the same calm authority that has carried every word of this sermon. The grass has bent in the afternoon breeze. The lake glitters in the distance. A child has fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder. The fishermen are listening with the stillness of men who know the power of a quiet voice. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? The word worry is not a command to become careless. It is not a command to abandon planning, to neglect duty, to ignore the needs of the family. It is a command to become free. Jesus does not mock the anxious heart. He sees it. He knows the way the mind turns at night, calculating, fearing, rehearsing. He knows the way the stomach tightens when the future is uncertain. He knows the way the hand clenches when provision feels thin. He knows the way the heart races when the numbers do not add up, when the crop is small, when the work is scarce, when the body is sick. And he does not say, your anxiety is a sin. He says, your anxiety is a burden you were not meant to carry. Life is more than food. The body is more than clothing. You are more than what you consume. You are more than what you wear. You are more than what you possess. You are a soul, breathed into existence by the Father, and the Father does not forget what he has made. The Father does not lose track of his children. The Father does not overlook the ones he has formed with his own hands. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? The birds are there, even as Jesus speaks. A sparrow moves from branch to branch, searching for a seed. A dove circles above the hillside, its wings catching the light. They do not plow fields. They do not store grain. They do not wake in the morning with a list of tasks that must be completed before winter comes. They do not lie awake at night, wondering if the harvest will be enough. They simply live. They fly. They receive. They take what the day gives. And the Father feeds them, not because they are worthy, not because they have earned it, not because they have planned carefully, but because they are His. They belong to the Father who made them. And if the Father feeds the birds, will He forget the ones who bear His image? Will He overlook the ones who pray to Him in secret? Will He abandon the ones who seek His kingdom first? Will He leave naked the ones He has called His children? The answer is woven into the question. You are of more value than they. The value is not earned. It is given. It is the value of being loved by the Father. And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single cubit to your span of life? Anxiety does not lengthen. It shortens. It does not build. It wears. It does not protect. It exhausts. The body responds to worry with tension, with sleeplessness, with a heart that races, with a stomach that refuses its food, with a mind that cannot find its rest. And none of it adds a day. None of it adds an hour. None of it adds a single cubit to the span of life. The span of life is held in the Father's hand, not in the clenched fist of the warrior. The days are numbered by the Father who knows the beginning and the end. And Jesus speaks this gently, not as an accusation, but as a release. Let the worry go. It was never doing the work you thought it was doing. It was never keeping you safe. It was only keeping you tired. It was only keeping you small. It was only keeping you from the rest that the Father offers. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these. The lilies are there too, among the grass on the hillside, perhaps near the feet of the listeners. Small, bright, temporary. They do not weave. They do not design. They do not compare themselves to the robes of kings. They do not envy the purple of royalty. They simply open to the sun. They receive the rain. They are clothed by the Father in a beauty that no human hand could replicate. No weaver in Damascus could match their color. No merchant in Tyre could sell their thread. And Solomon, with all his gold, all his wisdom, all his armies, all his splendor, was not arrayed like one of these. The glory of a king is borrowed. It is bought. It is assembled by human hands and human wealth. The glory of a lily is given. It is received. It is the gift of the Father to the smallest flower in the field, and the Father gives it freely. He does not charge the lily for its beauty. He does not demand that the lily earn its color. He simply gives, and if he gives such glory to the grass, how much more will he give to the ones he loves? But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today, and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Little faith, not no faith, not stubborn faith, just small faith, the faith of a child who forgets that the Father is near, the faith of a soul that has grown accustomed to anxiety, that has learned to worry before it has learned to trust. And Jesus does not condemn the little faith. He uses it as a doorway into greater trust. He invites the small faith to grow. He invites the worried heart to lift its eyes. If the grass, which is here and gone, receives such beauty, how much more will the children of the Father receive what they need? The oven is the furnace that bakes bread, the fire that warms the home. The grass is gathered for fuel. Its life is brief, its purpose humble, and still the Father dresses it. Still the Father colors it. Still the Father causes it to rise from the earth in quiet glory. And you, whom the Father loves, whom the Father sees in secret, whom the Father has invited to call him Father, will you be left naked? Will you be left hungry? Will you be left alone? The question answers itself in the stillness of the hillside. The answer is no. The answer has always been no. The answer is written in the lily, in the bird, in the sun that rises, in the rain that falls, in the secret room where the Father waits. Therefore do not worry, saying, "What will we eat? Or what will we drink? Or what will we wear?" For it is the Gentiles who strive for all these things, and indeed your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. The Gentiles, the ones who do not know the Father, they strive, they chase, they accumulate. They live as if the world is a closed system, as if everything must be seized before it disappears, as if the hand that does not grasp will always be empty. But the disciple lives differently. The disciple lives in the open hand of the Father. The disciple lives in the confidence that the Father knows. The Father knows what you need, not what you want, not what you imagine, not what you have convinced yourself you deserve, but what you need. The need is known before the prayer is spoken. The need is seen before the worry awakens. The need is held in the Father's hand before the child has even asked. And the Father who knows is the Father who provides. The Father who knows is the Father who sees in secret. The Father who knows is the Father who loves. But strive first for the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Strive first. The word is active. It is not a passive waiting. It is not a lazy fatalism that says, God will do everything, so I will do nothing. It is a running toward, a seeking, a setting of the face like flint toward the kingdom. But the striving is not anxious. It is purposeful. It is the striving of a soul that knows what matters most. It is the striving of a heart that has found its treasure, that has fixed its eye, that has chosen its master. Seek the kingdom. Seek the righteousness that Jesus has been teaching. The righteousness that exceeds the scribes and Pharisees. The righteousness of the poor in spirit, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, the hidden givers, the secret prayers, the quiet forgivers, the undivided hearts. Seek that first. Put that at the center. Let that be the treasure. Let that be the master. Let that be the hunger that drives the soul, and all the rest, the food, the drink, the clothing, the days, the years, the small mercies and the large, will be drawn into the orbit of the kingdom. They will be given, not seized, not hoarded, not worried into existence. Given, as a father gives to a child who has come home, as a father gives to a soul that has learned to trust. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. Tomorrow is not here. It has not arrived. It may never arrive in the form you fear, and the worry that rushes ahead of it only borrows trouble from a future that may not come. It only steals the peace of today in exchange for the phantom pain of a tomorrow that may never be. Today is enough. Today has its own needs. Today has its own mercies. Today has its own bread. Today has its own forgiveness. Today has its own hidden prayer, its own secret giving, its own small obedience. And the Father who fed the birds this morning, who clothed the lilies this afternoon, who heard the prayer in the secret room this evening, will be there when tomorrow becomes today. He will be there with the same love. He will be there with the same provision. He will be there with the same gaze that sees in secret and rewards in secret. The worry is released. The soul is unclenched. The heart is lifted toward the Father who sees, who knows, who provides, who loves. The heart is lifted toward the kingdom, where treasure is safe, where the eye is clear, where the Master is one. The breeze over Galilee is softening. The hillside has held these words for hours. The crowd has heard the secret giving, the hidden prayer, the Our Father spoken like a child learning to speak at home. They have heard the call to store treasures where moth and rust cannot reach. They have heard the warning against the divided heart, the darkened eye, the double master. And now they have heard the gentlest words of all. Do not worry. Look at the birds. Consider the lilies. You are more valuable than they. Your Father knows. Seek first the kingdom, and let tomorrow wait for tomorrow. The light has moved gently over the hills, and the lilies still stand in the grass where Jesus spoke of them. The birds have not ceased their song, but their song is softer now, as if the whole hillside is resting in the promise that the Father knows what his children need. The The listeners have breathed more slowly, hearing that the anxious heart is not left alone, that tomorrow is not a burden to carry, but a grace to receive. A fisherman sits with his nets folded beside him, no longer worrying about the catch that waits on the shore. A mother brushes a strand of hair from her sleeping child's cheek, and her own face has lost its hardness. The teaching about trust has settled into the grass like dew. The lake glitters in the distance, and the wind moves gently through the wild flowers. Somewhere a dog rests in the shade of an olive tree, and a small lizard pauses on a warm stone. It is the kind of stillness that makes room for deeper words. Yet the teaching does not end with rest alone. It turns, as all true teaching must, toward the way we walk with one another. Jesus looks across the crowd, and his voice carries the same calm authority, but now it speaks of something that cuts closer to the heart. He knows how easily we condemn. He knows how quick the human eye is to find fault in a neighbor, and how slow it is to see its own darkness. He knows that the anxious soul, once comforted, often becomes the anxious soul that criticizes. So he begins with a mercy that clears the ground before we ever raise a hand against another. The words fall slowly, like rain on dry soil, and the crowd leans in. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. This is not a command to stop seeing what is true. Jesus does not ask us to pretend that wrong is right, or that harm is harmless. He asks us to look at ourselves first, and to look with honesty. For the measure we use on others will be measured back to us. The same scale we lift against our brother will one day be set against our own life. If we pour out harshness, harshness will find us. If we pour out mercy, mercy will find us. This is not a threat. It is the plain geometry of the heart. What we give returns, because the Father sees the secret place, and the secret place shapes everything else. The man who sits in his home at night, remembering every fault of his neighbor, is building a room in his own soul that he will one day have to live inside. The woman who speaks mercy in secret is planting a garden she will walk through when winter comes. Jesus speaks of a man who sees a speck of dust in his brother's eye, yet carries a beam in his own. The image is almost gentle in its humor, but the humor is meant to wound our pride. We become experts in the small sins of others while we are strangers to our own. We carry planks, beams, whole timbers of selfishness, and still we point at the sliver in another's gaze. How can we see clearly to help our brother until we have allowed the truth to do its work in us? First, remove the beam from your own eye. Then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's. It is not a ban on discernment, but a call to humble discernment. The one who has been examined by mercy becomes capable of examining with mercy. The one who has known his own need for grace learns to speak grace into the need of another. The fisherman who has felt the weight of his own net sees his neighbor's tangle with patience. The mother who has wept over her own failures speaks gently to the child who has stumbled. The mercy we receive becomes the mercy we give, and the mercy we give becomes the mercy we live. Jesus does not leave us in a soft fog where every way is called good and every voice is trusted. He gives a warning that sounds like wisdom. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not cast your pearls before swine. These words are strong, but they are not cruel. They are the care of a wise farmer who knows the difference between soil and stone. There are truths that should not be mocked, and mercies that should not be trampled. Jesus teaches us to be gentle, but not foolish, to be merciful, but not naive, to offer the treasure of the kingdom with open hands, yet to recognize when a heart is closed. The teaching of Jesus does not erase discernment. It baptizes it. It washes the eye clean so that we can see as the Father sees, weighing both the need and the moment, both the soul and the truth. A child knows the difference between a door that opens and a door that slams. So does the disciple who has learned to walk with mercy and truth together. And then, as if the sky itself opens a little wider, Jesus speaks words that have steadied the frightened and lifted the faint for 2,000 years. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. He is not speaking of a merchant haggling in a market, or a soldier demanding a gate. He is speaking of a child who knows the Father's house. He is speaking of the plain trust that believes goodness is behind the door, that believes the Father does not hide bread from the hungry, or a stone from the one who needs to build. Every child who asks for bread does not receive a stone. Every child who asks for fish does not receive a serpent. If you, who are imperfect, who carry your own anger and your own forgetfulness, who have spoken words you wish you could take back and walked paths you wish, you had never found, if even you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? This is not a promise that every wish will be granted. It is a promise that the Father's nature is gift. It is a promise that the kingdom responds to need with nourishment, to longing with welcome, to knocking with an open door. The one who asks is not turned away. The one who seeks is not left wandering. The one who knocks is not left in the cold. The Father does not mock the child who asks. He does not hide from the seeker. He does not lock the door against the one who comes home weary. The asking is not a formula. The knocking is not a demand. It is the sound of a child at the door of a home that has always been open, even when the child forgot the way. The Father waits. The door always stands quietly unlatched. This is the character of the God Jesus reveals. He is not a distant judge, waiting for us to stumble. He is a Father, listening for the sound of our voice. And when we ask, when we seek, when we knock, we are not manipulating heaven. We are coming home. We are saying what every child knows in the deep of the night. I am here, I need you, and I trust that you are good. Jesus gathers this whole teaching into one final sentence that hangs in the air like a bell. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. This is the law, and the prophets lived outwardly. Every command about Sabbath and sacrifice, every warning about idolatry and injustice, every call to love the neighbor and honor the stranger, every longing of the prophets for a world where the poor are fed and the widow is defended, all of it gathers here. Do to others what you would want done to you. It is no clever strategy for success. It is the shape of a heart that has been touched by the Father's goodness. The one who knows he has been given mercy gives mercy. The one who has been fed feeds. The one who has been welcomed welcomes. The one who has been loved loves. This is how the kingdom moves through the world, not by force, but by the quiet, steady exchange of treating others as we ourselves hope to be treated. And this is the sound of Jesus' voice on the hillside, not the thunder of command, but the warmth of invitation, the calm of truth, and the mercy that makes room for us all. The sun is lower now over the hillside, and the teaching continues. Jesus does not leave his listeners in a comfortable field of gentle words. He has spoken of mercy, and mercy is real. But mercy is not soft. Mercy is strong, and it leads somewhere. The kingdom is not a feeling. It is a road, a gate, a life that answers to the Father's will. And now Jesus speaks of the way itself, the path that mercy clears and the path that mercy demands. The crowd is still. The birds are quiet. Even the wind seems to wait. The teaching has moved from the hidden prayer to the hidden heart. And now it must move from the hidden heart to the hidden road. He tells them to enter by the narrow gate. The wide gate is easy to find. The broad road is smooth and well-traveled. Many walk there, and the gate opens without effort, without cost, without change. But it leads to destruction. The narrow gate is harder to see. The road is pressed and difficult. Few find it, but it leads to life. Jesus does not say this to frighten the crowd into trembling. He says it because he loves them. He does not want them to mistake comfort for salvation or crowds for truth. The broad way is the way of the world as it is, the way of taking what you want, of speaking what pleases, of living as if the soul does not matter. The broad way is the way of the beam in the eye that never looks inward, of the prayer that is performed for men, of the treasure that is stored where moth and rust corrupt. It is the way that seems right because everyone else is walking it, and the sound of their footsteps drowns out the still small voice that asks where the road is really leading. The broad road is full of people who say the right words, who wear the right clothes, who perform the right prayers, but who have never asked the Father for bread with a hungry heart. The narrow way is the way of the kingdom, the way of mercy, purity, secret prayer, enemy love, and trust in the Father. It is the way of the poor in spirit, who know they have nothing to boast of. It is the way of the mourners who weep for what is broken. It is the way of the meek who do not grasp for what belongs to another. It is the way of those who hunger for righteousness more than for bread. It is not narrow, because God is cruel. It is narrow, because truth is narrow. Love is narrow. Holiness is narrow. The gate is the shape of Jesus himself, and those who enter through him into a life that is not easy, but is eternal. The narrow gate is the gate of the forgiven who forgive. It is the gate of the one who has removed the beam, and now sees clearly. It is the gate of the child who asks, the seeker who knocks, the heart that trusts the Father's goodness even when the road grows steep. The narrow gate is the gate where mercy meets obedience, where trust becomes truth, and where the soul finds the only road that leads home. It is the gate that Jesus himself walked, and he invites us to walk with him. Jesus warns them of false prophets. They come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. This is a warning for the heart, not a call to paranoia. The true prophet speaks the words of Jesus, points to the Father, and bears the fruit of the Spirit. The false prophet speaks what people want to hear, points to themselves, and bears the fruit of self. But Jesus does not leave us guessing in the dark. He tells us how to know. You will know them by their fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. The image is sober, but it is also clear. Fruit is not performance. Fruit is what grows naturally from the root. A tree does not strain to produce apples. It produces apples because it is an apple tree. You do not make an apple tree bear apples by hanging ornaments on its branches. You bear apples by being the tree you were made to be. The life that is rooted in the kingdom produces mercy, truth, patience, love, and obedience. The life that is rooted in itself produces ambition, anger, deception, and division. Fruit reveals the tree. The tree does not argue. The fruit speaks, and the fruit does not lie. It simply shows what the root has been drinking. The branch that bears good fruit has been living from the sap of the vine. The branch that bears bad fruit has been living from itself. And then Jesus speaks words that must have fallen over the crowd like a shadow across the sun. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Many will stand before him and speak of prophesying in his name, of casting out demons in his name, of doing mighty works in his name. And he will say to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. This is not the cruelty of a tyrant. This is the sorrow of a shepherd who sees sheep wandering in the wrong field. The kingdom is not entered by the volume of our words. It is entered by the reality of our obedience. The one who does the will of the Father in heaven is the one who belongs to the kingdom. Words are easy. Fruit is hard. Speech is quick. Obedience is slow. The narrow gate is not a slogan. It is a life. The Lord is not a password. It is a relationship. And the relationship is known by the fruit, by the way, by the gate, by the life that does what Jesus says. The one who truly knows Jesus does not only call him Lord. The one who truly knows Jesus does the will of the Father. Jesus does not say this to crush the listener. He says it to wake the listener. He wants us to examine our own tree. He wants us to look at our own fruit. Do we love when it costs us? Do we forgive when we would rather remember? Do we pray in secret, give in secret, fast in secret? Do we treat others as we would be treated? Do we seek first the kingdom? Or do we seek first our own comfort? Do we enter by the narrow gate? Or do we drift with the crowd on the broad road? The warning is not a weapon against our neighbor. It is a mirror held before our own soul. And in the mirror, we do not find despair. We find the invitation to turn, to enter the narrow gate, to walk the difficult road, to become a tree that bears good fruit because it is rooted in the mercy and truth of Jesus. We find the voice of the Father who still says, ask. We find the door that still opens to the one who knocks. We find the mercy that judges the beam in our own eye so that we can see the way to life. We find the narrow gate standing open, waiting for the one who will leave the broad road behind. The hillside grows quiet. The listeners are no longer shifting in the grass. They are still. The teaching has moved from birds and lilies to beams and fruit, from the Father's open door to the narrow gate that leads to life. And now each heart is asked the question that only it can answer. What fruit do I bear? What road do I walk? What gate have I chosen? The question is not asked with a pointing finger. It is asked with a gentle hand, the hand of Jesus, who wants every soul to find life, to find the kingdom, to find the Father. And in the stillness of that question, the teaching waits, like seed in good soil, for the rain that only God can send. The wind moves through the grass. The lake glitters in the distance. The birds have begun to sing again, but softer now, as if they too are listening. And somewhere on the hillside, a child opens her eyes and looks at her mother with the kind of trust that Jesus has been speaking about all along. This is the kingdom. This is the narrow gate. This is the fruit that remains. This is the mercy that gently judges, and the judgment that leads home. Jesus has called his listeners to enter through the narrow gate. He has warned them that not everyone who says, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of his Father in heaven. The fruit of a tree reveals what the tree truly is. Words alone are not enough. The kingdom must be lived. And now, having spoken of gates and paths, of prophets and fruit, of words that sound holy but lack obedience, Jesus turns to the image that will hold everything together. He speaks of a house, and the ground beneath it, and the storm that tests whether anything was built to last. The hillside has grown still. The afternoon light is changing, and the lake below glimmers with the kind of silver that comes only when the sun begins its slow descent. The crowd has been sitting for a long time. Their legs are stiff, their throats are dry, but no one moves. Jesus looks at them with the love of a shepherd who knows that the last word must be the one they remember when the darkness comes. And so he speaks of building. Everyone who hears these words of Jesus and does them, he says, is like a wise man who built his house upon rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation upon rock. The words fall gently from his mouth, but they carry the weight of final things. He is not describing a preference. He is describing the difference between life and death, between standing and falling, between the soul that endures and the soul that collapses when the hidden storms arrive. The wise man does not merely admire the rock. He digs. He removes the soil. He clears away the loose stone until he reaches the bedrock that has been there since the mountains were formed. He sweats. His hands grow rough. The work is slow, and it offers no immediate reward. No one praises him for a hole in the ground, but he builds with the patience of one who knows that the sky will not always be clear, that the calm morning is not a promise, and that a house is only as strong as what holds it up when the water rises. And then Jesus speaks the other half. Everyone who hears these words and does not do them is like a foolish man who built his house upon sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell. Great was its fall. The same storm struck both houses, the same rain, the same rising water, the same wind pressing against the walls. The difference was never the storm. The difference was the foundation. The foolish man heard the same teaching. He sat on the same hillside. He saw the same face of Jesus. Perhaps he even nodded. Perhaps he felt moved. Perhaps he told others that he had been there, that he had heard the teacher, that the words were beautiful, but he did not obey. He built his life as though the words were a pleasant sound rather than a command to be followed. He built on sand because sand is easier. It requires no digging. It offers no resistance. It lets you begin immediately, and it feels firm enough while the sun is shining. The sand warms quickly and shifts to fit whatever shape you press into it. But it does not hold. It never holds. The sand is not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like a busy life filled with good intentions that never settle into obedience. Sometimes it looks like a reputation for faithfulness that never reaches the secret places of the heart. Sometimes it looks like a person who knows all the right words, but has never allowed those words to shape how he treats his brother, how he forgives his enemy, how he gives in secret, how he refuses to judge, how he prays with the simplicity of a child. The sand is any life that hears Jesus and then returns to the old patterns, as though nothing had been asked. The sand is the assumption that feeling close to God is the same as building upon Him. The sand is the hope that storms will not come, or that if they do, they will not be strong enough to matter. But storms always come. Suffering comes. The death of a loved one comes. Betrayal comes. Sickness comes. The moment when everything is called into question comes. The night when the soul stands naked before its own choices comes. And in that hour, the house built on sand does not sway, it falls. Great is its fall. The falling is loud, and the dust rises, and what looked like a house is revealed as nothing more than a heap of timber on wet ground. Jesus does not describe the storm with cruel delight. He speaks of it with sorrow. He knows what is coming for those who refuse to dig deep. He has seen the human heart long enough to know that admiration without obedience is a kind of tragedy. The multitudes on the hillside are listening. Some of them are tired. Some have walked for miles. Some have brought their doubts. Some have brought their hunger. And Jesus is telling them, with love that does not flatter, that the only life worth building is the life that both hears and does. The rock is not a feeling. The rock is obedience. The rock is the daily choice to forgive when forgiveness is costly. The rock is the secret prayer when no one is watching. The rock is the mercy shown to an enemy. The rock is the refusal to store up treasure on earth. The rock is the trust that the Father who feeds the birds will also feed the soul. The rock is the narrow gate, entered again and again, every morning, every time the heart wants to turn back to the broad and easy way. Picture the two houses as the teaching settles. They may have looked similar from the outside. The sand house might have been larger, more impressive, more quickly finished. Its builder might have been praised for his speed, his creativity, his visible success. The rock house might have been smaller, slower, hidden from view, noticed by no one but the one who built it and the God who watched. But the storm does not look at appearances. The storm tests the foundation, and the foundation is never seen until the storm comes. This is why Jesus calls his listeners to examine themselves, to ask not how their life looks in sunlight, but how it will stand in rain. The soul that does his words does not need to fear the storm. The storm will come. It will beat against the walls. The water will rise. But the house will stand. Not because the house is strong, but because the rock beneath it is stronger. The rock is Christ. The rock is the will of the Father. The rock is the kingdom that does not move when the kingdoms of this world shake. And then the teaching ends. The words stop. Jesus falls silent. The hillside that had been filled with his voice now holds only the wind, the distant sound of birds, the breathing of the crowd. For a moment, no one speaks. The disciples sit near him, their faces turned toward the lake below, their minds still holding the weight of what they have heard. The people who had been sitting on the grass begin to look at one another, not with the chatter of a crowd dispersing, but with the quiet wonder of those who know they have heard something that will not leave them. And then the Gospel tells us that the multitudes were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority, and not as the scribes. The scribes taught by citing others. They spoke of what Moses said, what this rabbi argued, what that tradition held. Their words were layered with reference upon reference, until the listener was surrounded by a wall of quotations and left wondering whether any voice could speak plainly. They debated the meaning of the law with the cautious posture of men who handled something precious but feared to touch it directly. Their voices rose and fell with the rhythm of argument, of one opinion against another, of schools competing for attention. But Jesus spoke as one who knew the truth from the inside. He did not borrow authority. He possessed it. His words did not ask to be believed because of who had said them before. They asked to be believed because they carried the weight of heaven itself. The people felt it. They did not need a theological education to recognize it. They felt the difference between a man who passes along wisdom and a man who is wisdom. They felt the calm that came from his voice, the certainty that did not bully, the love that did not compromise. They were astonished, not entertained, not merely impressed, astonished. The kind of astonishment that follows you home and sits with you in the dark and asks whether you are willing to change. The kind of astonishment that makes you forget your hunger, your tiredness, the long walk back to the village, because something has shifted inside you and you cannot pretend it has not. The mountain grows quiet now. Jesus has finished speaking, and the hillside holds the silence that comes after something sacred has been said. The crowd remains for a while, not wanting to leave, not knowing exactly what to do with what they have heard. Some sit with their heads bowed. A mother holds her child closer, as though the words were a blanket she wanted to share. A fisherman stares at the ground, turning the teaching over in his mind like a stone in his hand. The lilies of the field that Jesus spoke about are still there, growing quietly among the grass, unconcerned with the anxiety of tomorrow. The birds pass overhead on their way to the lake, carrying nothing, trusting everything. The city on the hill that Jesus mentioned is visible in the distance, its light not yet needed because the sun is still high, but its presence a reminder that the disciples are meant to shine where darkness gathers. The salt of the earth is still in their hands, though they may not yet know what it means to remain flavorful in a world that dulls everything. The light of the world is still in their eyes, though they have not yet learned how steady a lamp must burn to guide another person home. Let the words settle now. Let them find their place in the soul. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The blessings Jesus spoke are not rewards for success. They are invitations to the humble, the broken, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers, the persecuted. He blessed the hidden ones, the ones who do not demand attention, the ones who come empty-handed before God. He warned the proud, the angry, the unforgiving, the anxious, the divided heart. He taught the secret prayer, the Our Father, spoken not for crowds but for the quiet room where heaven leans close to earth. Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us. Deliver us. The prayer is not a performance. It is a child speaking to the one who sees in secret, who knows what we need before we ask, who rewards what is hidden. He taught mercy before judgment. He taught that the measure we use will be measured back to us. He taught that the speck in a brother's eye is not our concern, while a beam remains in our own. He taught that asking, seeking, knocking, are not demands but trust, the trust of a child who knows the Father gives good gifts. He taught the golden rule, that we should do to others what we would have them do to us. For this is the law, and the prophets lived outwardly. He taught the narrow gate, the hard way that leads to life, and warned against the broad way that looks easy but ends in destruction. He taught that a tree is known by its fruit, that words without obedience are empty, that the kingdom is not merely spoken, but lived. And now, at the end, he has given the image that holds everything, the house on rock, the soul that hears and does, the life that stands when the storm comes, the life that does not pretend the sky will always stay clear, but digs deep anyway, builds slow anyway, trusts anyway. Rest now with these words. Let the world grow quiet around you. Let the day loosen its grip. Let your breathing slow. The kingdom of heaven is not a distant place. It is here, in the hearing and doing of Jesus. It is here, in the secret prayer, in the hidden mercy, in the trust that refuses anxiety, in the narrow way chosen again each morning, in the fruit that grows from a rooted heart, in the house built upon rock that does not fall when the storm beats against it. The voice of Jesus has spoken. The mountain has grown quiet. The teaching is finished. What remains is the choice to build, to dig, to obey, to let the words become the foundation of a life that will stand. And now, in the stillness that follows, let the soul rest. This has been the Shepherd's Bible. May his words remain with you, and may you find rest in them.